Hey team, welcome back. My name's Nick. For those of you who don't know me, registered licensed architect in the US, and I love to do these Revit tutorial videos for beginner, intermediate, and advanced architects. Wide range of things. Today is a more beginner to intermediate level video that we'll be covering, and we'll be covering grid lines specifically in this video, and what those are all about. All right, so let's get started. I have a floor plan view here open on my screen, and this project, as you can tell in 3D, has both levels, several levels. It's a smaller project, but it has grid lines, so we'll use it for this sample project today. And as you can tell, you can select on the grid lines in 3D, and they are basically just planes, right? For those of you who are more beginners, beginner architects, grid lines are just planes in the X and Y generally. However, they can be at different angles, of course, and they stretch all the way through. They should stretch all the way through from below the project to above the top plane of the project, and they do currently. And you can select each one individually in 3D view. But the reason I want to show you this 3D view, we'll cover that later. But as you can tell, the 3D view can be manipulated here in 3D. You can click and drag these as well as in 2D. So grids can be manipulated in 3D and 2D views. All right. Right now I have all these grids locked, which they're all pinned, and I recommend pinning your grids at all times when you're not editing them because they can be shifted or moved accidentally, and that would not be good. All right. So let's go back into the floor plan view and see what we're working with. Right now, as you can tell, first things first, these these labels are overlapping each other and you can't read them very well, right? So let's fix that. To do that and fix them so they're not overlapping, you just select on this add elbow. So you select a grid and then the add elbow breakpoint here. Once you select that, you can then drag this little handle here down to create more room for the label itself. When moving that, when dragging that, as you can tell, the actual grid here is not being adjusted or moved. All you're doing is adjusting the handle and the label here on the edge of the view. Same thing here, select that, and then you can shift this as needed. So that's probably about right. They're not overlapping anymore and you can read them accurately, which is all that matters. Okay, so that looks good there. And then you can line these, there's different handles you can align as needed. If you wanted to shift this back to what it was, all you need to do is grab that handle and then drag it back to when it snaps to be in place again. So Revit will kind of snap it automatically down, okay? If you ever need to move that back. All right. Next, we need to fix these. I'm not going to move these trees because I want them in that location. So that means we need to move the grids themselves down. To do that, since they're all still locked out, we'll select on one grid, right click, and go to select all instances, visible in view, and we will unpin the grids here. Okay, first things first, we need to unpin the grid so we can move them. Next, we can select one grid and move it down generally. However, right now, these grids are showing as, when you select a grid, you can tell that it's 3D right now because of this little 3D label here. So you can switch it to 2D extents, which we're going to do individually for each grid. Okay? And this is how you do that. Typically, the slow way to do it is this way. I'll show you the fast way a bit later. So you would select each grid line and change it to 3D first. And the reason you don't want it 2D is because that would, if it was 3D and not 2D, and you clicked and moved these grid lines down, then it would affect the grid lines in all other views, which is no good. We have these locked kind of in 3D, and now we're just moving them in this specific view, so we want them in 2D before we move them, if that makes sense. Okay. A lot of you may know that already, but I just want to clarify that. So we'll select one grid, and to shift them all down, first you can tell with this blue dashed line that they're all locked together. So they're going to move together if you shift one. All right. So now that they're all 2D, and we can check that by just clicking each one to make sure it's 2D. right? They're all 2D now. And we can select one and click this handle right here to drag them down away from the trees a good distance, but also not right on the wall here. So we need a little space to dimension later, right? Okay. So this is looking a lot better already, and we can now propagate extents here. So the propagate extents tool, you need to select all the grids you want to propagate first, and this tool will be up here under propagate extents in the top toolbar. All right, copies the extents and appearance of datum elements to parallel views. So you can do this easily with grids, and the reason we want to do this is first, let me show you this floor plan loft view here. This view, the grids are all messed up, right? And so we want to basically match this look and feel of grids here on this as well. And instead of having to change these out individually and add bubbles over here and take these bubbles off, right, you would have to do this individually for each view that you want to change. You have to change these bubbles, and it's just very time consuming, right? And then once you do that, you would have to again clean these elbows up and so forth. So instead of doing all that, what we're going to do, we're going to backspace out of that, and what we're going to do is propagate extents. And that is a super useful tool in Revit if you don't know it already. And what we need to do that is just selecting on one grid, right click, select all instances, visible in view. So we're selecting all the grids here, and we are then selecting propagate extents. And all we need to do in this screen is select the views we want to propagate the extents to. And right now for this sample, we're just doing the floor plan loft view. You can select only shows views with the same scale as current, which is kind of useful as well, but that doesn't matter for today's tutorial. We're just going to change and propagate for our floor plan loft view. So now we're just going to select OK, and we'll go back to the floor plan loft view and see that these are all now updated and copying exactly what we had here with the grid setup. Okay, this is awesome. This tool will save you a ton of time, especially if you have like 20 views that you need to propagate extends to, and you just want to change them first once. So yeah, we'll save you hours, honestly. All right. So lastly, we talked about locking and unlocking grids with the pen tool. We talked about changing the shape and using the the elbow tool to kind of click and drag and adjust that. And we also talked about propagating extents and what the difference between 2D and 3D is and why that's important with grids. So lastly, as I want to just show you this really nice tool, which is first, let's change all these back to 3D real quick. Reset to 3D extents, okay? For these, let's do it for all of these grids here. So let's click and drag all these grids and return them to 3D extents, okay? So say these are back at the 3D level. Basically, all we need to do now is, so grids, they basically relate to the crop region, right? Sorry, the grids relate to crop regions, and you can also put a scope box on grids, so you can like change the grid to a scope box, which is another way to do things when it comes to like aligning grids on views. But in this instance, all we want to do is I want to show you that you don't have to click on each of these individually and change them to 2D. There's a much faster way to do that, which is you select the crop region and then just drag it down below so that the extents of the grid are outside of the crop region. So now when I select the grid, you'll see it's 2D, right? All these are now 2D. So instead of changing them individually, so I drag that crop line back up, they return to 3D, and then drag that back down. So as you can tell, all I'm doing is saving a ton of time by clicking and changing these from 2D to 3D. It really just relates to the crop region. Now, I didn't know about this for forever, but it's as simple as that. And so if I ever want to adjust a grid and not have it affect the 3D grids, I just drag the crop region so that even just a portion of the grid is outside the crop region, and that changes it to 2D. I can now click and drag down however far I'd like, and then and even if I go past the crop region, that's fine. It still keeps it 2D. So yeah, that's a super useful tool, and I highly recommend using that when just to save time on clicking and adjusting these individually. It's just a pain in the ass. All right, guys. So that's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, submit them down below. I'll get to them when I can. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.